fans the flames.
Oh, she's not ready for you yet.
Oh, okay.
Now she's ready for you. She's doing the sound blast, so they all have a sign. Please say again.
I do think that the media tends to fan the flames. They take something that could be a 2-second problem that was probably pretty minor, and they tend to blow it all up if it has anything to do with a racial situation, whether the perpetrator of whatever this was is black or white, if it's between two people. If you have a road rage between two white people, it never makes the news. But if it's a road rage between a black and white, it will definitely make the news. I think they definitely fan the flames.
And they repeat it ad nauseum. That's the other thing. You know, when television actually used to sign off at a particular time, now you have it 24/7, so you can turn on the new, and you'll see it again. It keeps coming. You know, it's over and over, and so it just, you keep getting the negative stories and the sensationalization of the events of the day over and over again.
Look at it from the other side. If you're looking at it from the black side, I think there's a real serious problem. I mean, the video camera on these telephones has just brought it to the forefront. It's always been happening. It's always been happening. We've been dealing with the community like that forever. I mean, black lives do matter. And if it was your son that was shot, yeah, it matters. And we probably don't want to look at that, but that's a real serious problem. And it seems, I mean, how many times do you have to see it happen all over the country to understand that this is a big issue with the black community, and I think it's a real issue.
But I wonder, is it happening more, or is it just as you say? Because now we have cell phone cameras, and we have the 24-hour news cycle, and is it just we're reporting things that were always happening? Has there been an increase or not?
Well, we're not really aware of that, because if it happened in the past, if you look at the city of Houston, there has been no one convicted ever for shooting somebody like that. I remember when they said Hou2 Ws couldn't swim. Well, he couldn't swim because they threw him in the bayou and he had handcuffs on. And has that been going on all along? I have a feeling that it has. And it's vigilante justice. And it's not right. And just because you have a gun, it doesn't give you the right to shoot somebody in the back. It just doesn't. And it's, you know, if it was your family, if it happened to you, it'd be a real problem. And I don't think that you'd feel at all upset about people, you know, about Quanell X coming out and talking to the community about it. If it was your son or your daughter, yeah, it would be a serious problem.
It has always been a serious problem, particularly with most police departments. I don't think the Houston Police Department is necessarily any better or any worse than a lot of others. I think some of this is learned behavior because they do seem to get a lot more police calls to lower income and black neighborhoods for whatever reason. But it is also true that when they get out of their car facing a black person, their entire demeanor is different than if they're facing somebody like me.
But I think the police would argue.
They probably would, and they may not even be aware of it, but it is definitely true. I know that black parents, in trying to educate their children, particularly their sons, they give them very specific, not just instructions, but actual training and practice in what do you do if you have to deal with a policeman. And the theme of it is, forget your dignity, you're trying to get home alive.
Were any of you talked to about how to react if a police officer pulled you over? What your behavior should be?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I was taught how to react. And what I was taught is completely different from what a black father would tell his son.
What were you taught?
You get out of the vehicle, you move to the back of the vehicle, you stand there respectively and keep your hands in sight.
And what do you think a black person is taught?
Well, I know what my friend D.A. told his sons. Stay in the vehicle, keep your hands on the steering wheel, don't move, and don't say anything until you're asked a question.
But that's what I was taught too. That's what my parents told me. Put your hands on top of the steering wheel, sit there and wait to be told what to do, and whatever it is, do it.
The difference is, I think, I don't think your father or mine were worried about the death penalty.
No.
I think D.A. with his sons was worried about them literally being shot on the side of the road, because that does happen quite often with young black men.
Do you think there is any validity to the school of thought that African Americans and or black people in the way they are raised, or in the communities in which they live, or in the drug culture that is kind of built up, or all of that, that there may be a degree of a more violent nature, that there may be a reaction, that the police are walking into it with a different set of information about a community of people, and that maybe it is justified to be more aware when, and I hate to use the term profiling, but recognizing someone is black, that's bringing a different set of behaviors with it.
I think, whether that's true or not, I think the police believe it is. And this is the reason for the change in their behavior, the change in their demeanor. Whether it's actually true or not, I have no way to tell. But I think the police believe it.
Anyone else?
My son's a school teacher in Georgia. And when he first started teaching, he taught at a predominantly black high school. And there may have been one or two white kids, but it was predominantly black. And they were from various walks of life. They had some very affluent kids, but then they had what they call project kids. And I've heard him tell stories about some of the project kids that he worked with and tried to help. And they had very little supervision at home. Frequently there was an absent father. A mother was probably working 2 jobs a day to try to feed the family. And these kids were basically unsupervised, and certainly the parents, or parent in most cases, a lot of cases, were not really interested in the child's education. So the children were, they were kind of on their own. And plus they were probably influenced by a lot of the prejudices that their parents had felt that certainly went on in the South years and years ago. So I think a lot of this gets back to the home situation and the home values that these kids are raised in.
I think that if you believe that people live up to, or aspire to live up to an expectation that you set, and we make that assessment of children. We say, well, if you expect more of a child, then they will strive to give you more. Then if you believe that, you have to believe that the reverse of that is true as well. If you don't have expectations, if you tell them that you don't expect much of them, then maybe they won't try quite as hard. They won't feel quite as inspired to strive. So that could be a factor.
I agree with that. I'm a school teacher as well. And I have seen this over and over. Expectation is critical in student success. A lot of studies have been done on that. There is a direct correlation there. If you set the bar high and expect that the child will perform, they try. That gives them a limit. It gives them something to work for. But if you don't, you don't get their effort.
Stay with me for a minute in this thought that's coming to me as I listen to it. So if in fact we talk about economic difference more so than a racial difference initially, and we say, the challenges that face a low-income family are different than those in a middle or an upper-class family, and there is a greater proportion of what we call minorities in the low-income area because of the structure, however we've gotten to this point. But so now we've got a group that has a lot of African Americans in it that are suffering from these problems that we all just talked about. So then they're raised in that environment. Now, as a white child in a school, as opposed to a black person in a school, even if they're both coming in low economics, a teacher is going to maybe see a little more potential in the white student than the black student, right, wrong, or indifferent. But so that's where they're being brought up. So by the time we get to adulthood, we have got a community of African Americans that maybe have been socialized by our own system to behave in these ways that we've been talking about. Then they perpetuate it, having their children, and it moves up again. Are we in fact creating a class of people, a race of people that are falling into this less care about education, more violent, more all of the stereotypes we hear? Is there something in society that's actually making that real?
I think so. I think that if you act on a belief, it can become more real. You can cause it to become more real, and that can be positive or negative.
Anyone else?
It seems to be very difficult to break the pattern. It does happen, but I think, people say that, they pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And I think that when you really look at it, if you look around, there were a lot of people pulling on those bootstraps. It wasn't something that they did by themselves. It's very seldom that. And it takes a tremendous amount of involvement to help break that down. And I don't think, it seems to me that the society as a whole, just maybe from an economic standpoint, doesn't have the desire or doesn't have the will to invest what it's going to take to break that. It's a very difficult situation. You get into bureaucracies. You also get into situations where you have to follow the money, and sometimes the money is not doing what you want it to do, and sometimes it may be causing part of the problem. So I don't know how you deal with it, but it's going to take a tremendous amount of effort on everybody's part, and that effort is going to have to start at home. I don't know how you if it's not happening at home, if you're not getting the support at home and you're being just turned loose, it's a real serious problem.
I think one of the difficulties we have is that we now have a relatively large, well-educated group of people with an economic self-interest in perpetuating the system of poverty and dependence that